Hello, and welcome to our program, Where God Weeps, a program where we speak about the situation of the suffering and persecuted church around the world. Micronesia, a group of some 600 islands, is renowned as one of the most beautiful and remote places on the earth, boasting azure blue waters, palm-shaded beaches, and ancient ruins. It is, however, facing severe problems, caught between the geopolitical interests of China and the USA and the effects of climate change, where the rising sea waters challenge the very existence of the population. To tell us more, it's my great pleasure to welcome the Coadjutor Bishops of the Caroline Islands, one of the island chains that make up the Federated States of Micronesia, His Excellency Bishop Julio Angkel. Your Excellency, welcome and thank you for being with us here today in our program.
Thank you, Mark, for this opportunity to be with you.
Your Excellency, just to put us on the map, can you describe geographically a little bit where the Federated States of Micronesia are?
This group of small islands, they are situated in the northern part of the Pacific. And if you want to look at them easily on the map, it is not easy to be found.
It's
very small, just like dots. But then you can locate them way up above Papua New Guinea, and also the Northern Marianas, and also south of the Philippines. So these are a group of small islands, cluster of coral atolls, and there are also some little bit of islands where you can have some little bit mountains, in a sense.
Your Excellency, how high would be the highest point of these islands, for example?
I would say that maybe the highest would be 300 to 400 feet.
Your Excellency, 60% of Micronesia is Catholic. How would you describe the faith of the people? Is it religious popularity in the sense of processions and rosaries? Or how would you describe the lived faith of these islanders?
Yeah, it is true that the spirituality of the people, as I look back, is really coming from their coming together for their coming to church for rosary, and also coming to this Catholic gathering, even outside the church, wherein they speak about the faith, as well as gathering to sing together, and then have meal together as well. And celebration of the parishes, the anniversaries, and also what we call this apostleship of prayer gathering, in which I think the Spanish priests were the one who actually introduced it, and then it was an opportunity to call all Christians together in the village to come together, once a month.
So it's a very communitarian faith, based on the community. Yeah. Is this something that continues to grow, the Catholic faith in the islands, or do you find with, for example, secularization and materialism, a change in the lives of the people and therefore a change also in the lives of the faithful?
It is true. Materialism and secularism is now entering into the life of the people. And that is mostly because education is also leading the life, and people go outside, and then they come back, and then they seem to bring in the value of, owning material things, and then not to worry too much about those kind of gathering of people. Instead, they value going to work, doing their businesses and things like that. But still, I'm very happy to say that the rest of the people still value going to church, but there are that elements coming in from that idea of valuing material things, and there are some individuals who seem to not to value coming to church anymore because of
Right.
they're more valuing to do their work rather.
How about vocations? What is the situation, for example, with regard to religious life, sisters, but also priests? Is there still a young generation who are willing to give their life to the Lord?
Yes, there are 4 groups of islands. We call them vicariates. Before it used to be Chuk, where I came from, the most vocation, and therefore there were many more priests who were ordained from there. But now there is a growing number from Pohnpei. Pohnpei is another
Island.
Yapi is a little bit. Palau is also growing slowly, but vocation is still growing, but need more encouragement now.
Do you have enough priests for the population? I think the total population of the islands is something like 160,000, no?
Mm-hmm.
But the distances must be the problem that for a priest to get maybe to these islands. What is the problem here? If you can give
It's
us...
really not enough priests to be placed in those different group of islands. So for instance, in Pohnpei, there are 10 parishes, but there are only 4 priests there at the present, and they stay in one place, and they only go out for the needs that are happening when they need them. They go out, or on Sunday they go, and maybe one priest will say Mass in 2 parishes,
But for example, the villagers on the farthest islands, how often would they see a priest? Is it once a month or every 2 weeks? Or what would be the rhythm?
Yeah, that's the situation on Pohnpei, because Pohnpei is kind of a bigger island where transportation is good. But like in Chuk or in Yap or in Palau, there are outer islands where it is not easy to reach. So like in Chuk, we have lagoon islands where there are priests assigned to some group of islands. But the outer islands, no priests assigned. So they would maybe once to be visited by priests maybe once in 2 months or even 3 months. Sometimes when it comes to worse, when transportation and bad weather, then it takes 6 months or even...
Before they see a priest.
Before they see a priest.
Wow, that's for confession and for Holy Mass, it's a long time.
That's right.
Your Excellency, I want to turn the page a little bit to the question of the living standards. If I understand correctly, 41% of the population live under the poverty line. How do you see poverty on a day-to-day basis in the islands, and what do we understand by poverty?
Really, I do not know much of the other group of islands, but I would say, like in Chuk, really, as I travel to the bigger countries, I don't really see poverty as I see in those bigger countries, as people who go around and look for food in the...
And beg, for example.
They can, poverty just in a sense of not having enough good clothes, and maybe sometimes with regards to food. But since our culture is also that we support one another within the extended family, so you don't really see people suffer from not having food, because if one needs food, you can go to another member of the extended family, or you can look and I say, why don't you share this to those people? So in a sense, maybe in material standard, it could be that, but
in actual living or life, the general life, people have enough to eat. There's enough fruit, there's enough fish in the sea. There's still enough to live. No?
That's right.
A quick question: what are the relationships? You mentioned the extended family, which I suppose then also would extend to the ethnic group. No. What are the relations between the ethnic groups? Are they harmonious? Have there been historical challenges? And if there are historical challenges, how do you dialogue? How do you resolve these challenges, also in a traditional way?
Yeah, Nowadays, we are very grateful because of the Christian some activities of the church, which have bring them together to be living harmoniously. But before, there were challenges because of wanting to own power over the land and over property, and that was many years ago. But nowadays, some challenges between the people is sometimes because of drinking. Alcoholism, they drink and then they fight. And sometimes people are injured or even get killed. And in situations like that, we have some ways of doing reconciliation in which members of family of the one offending, they really come together and then plan out on how to visit that family to ask for reconciliation and bring something
as compensation.
And
this is a historical, let's say, a tribal or an ethnic group way of dealing with the problem. And does the local law recognize this as a valid way of compensating and solving this problem?
Yeah. Nowadays, I see cases wherein they truly value what the people are doing in making peace. But some people, in a sense, I can tell that they really want that person to be in jail, so that they don't want to make that reconciliation before the court case happen. But what the old people valuing in doing that is that there is, even though that person is in jail, but there is peace between the people, between the village, when they do the reconciliation.
Your Excellency, I want to change chapters again and talk about climate change. We hear very often about the issue of the rising sea levels, about climate change, and I wanted to ask you, you're living on the ground, you see the reality. Is this something which is really, is it a phenomenon that we just talk a lot about, or is it something really practically every day you start to see the impact of this climate change on the islands which lie so low in the ocean?
Yeah, I would say from my own experience, on my island, there is really a problem of our staple food, which is taro, because we plant it in the swampy area, and then when this high tide comes, and it is much more higher than before, and then it is going and then affects them.
What is taro? Is it like a root? Is it like
the root? Huh?
It's a potato, like a potato, or
yeah. Actually, the root when it is growing well, it can go like this or even this. But once the salt,
so the salt water
comes in, and it's in the mud, and then it affects the root.
Do you find also problems with your freshwater sources? Because if I understand correctly, another issue of the rising sea level is that the freshwater sources are then affected.
Yeah. People are now try as much as possible to just get from rainwater, because some of those wells that are used to be good for shower and all that is brackish because of the high tide rising
in these areas. What's happening to the population? Are they being forced to move away from the coastal areas? Because if I understand correctly, only from my reading, the coastal areas are the most fertile areas in terms of agriculture. Is it meaning that the population is having to pull back from the coastal areas and plant then in higher areas?
Trying to move into the...
But that must also provoke some kind of sociological problems between the people, because you're suddenly, instead of having a certain territory, suddenly a larger population is reduced to a smaller area. No?
Yeah, and that varies also, because it is true that for the smaller, very low islands, then you see people are trying to do that now. But in the other islands, which are kind of higher, they seem to be still be able to stay.
Still able to manage.
Stay where they are.
And what about the young people? Are they migrating? Are they leaving the islands because they see no future, perhaps, for themselves and their families, in view of the fear, perhaps justified or not justified, but all of this talk, of course, provokes a fear, and perhaps the young people say, maybe I need to go somewhere else.
That is true. There is a great number of young people, even as well as older people, middle-aged men and women. And they are now going to Honolulu, they're going to the mainland, because I guess because of that they look for a better shelter where they could live. But most of them, because of education, they look for better education, and then for job opportunities. And for some of those people also, they move out to seek for health care, where they can get better health care.
Does this raise a concern for you, for not only for the people, but also for the life of the church? If you see the young people starting to migrate away, of course it's eating away at the foundation.
Yeah, we seem to see it in two different ways. One is, we don't want them to just move out without having a real purpose of going out, because we have experienced that some people who just want to do that, and then they are sent back because the other government, they don't see the value of their stay, they are sent back. But those who move with very definite goal that they want to achieve when they're there, they seem to be helping members of family by sending money and sending some of the things that they need, and they ask them to help from our island. They ask them, and that's
so there is a positive balance in the sense that the money they generate, they send back to support the family on the island.
Support the family on the islands. Yeah.
Your Excellency, we've spoken about the mainland, which would be the United States. Of course, the agreement that exists between the United States and these islands as a so-called protectorate, the ability of the young people to go to and from the United States for studies, for medical care, without costs. It's easy. A new area of concern, if we might call it like that, is the growth of China into these waters. That is the expansion, economic expansion, but also the maritime territorial interests, if you will, because as we've mentioned, these islands lie right in the heart of south of the China, north of Papua New Guinea. It's really an area, hot area at the moment. How do you see the growth of China? Do you see the growth of China and their interests in Micronesia, and how?
A few years ago, I was on Pohnpei, and then they have the Japanese embassy and Chinese embassy, and there is really competition for them to provide something that the nation will see as something important that they bring into the nation. Pohnpei is like the head of the federation, so they have the embassies there. But now also in Chuk, there is a group of workers who came in. They brought in a project where they build administration, and people from there, they come and they build it, and then they bring in their own materials and then labor, and then they do. And there is quite a presence of them now because of that work. And I think they were also doing that in Pohnpei, as well as in the other states. There are some presence of business as well as doing construction work.
How do you see the future? Because you're caught rather at the core of this issue. Is this a concern for you and for the church? And how do you try and balance these enormous questions where you are almost like a peanut in this issue, but nonetheless will impact the future of your home?
Yes, that's true. I think it is a concern of people now, especially in the political sphere, where those people who are looking at the status of our nation will be, because the compact of the free association in the United States, the money side of it will in 2023 they will stop, and then we have to see how we can survive on our own. There is a move that some people in my state of Chuk, they would like to make Chuk move out from the FSM, so they begin to see how they can do things on their own. Whereas the others, the rest of the FSM, they want to be together until that time, so they will continue to search ways to be able to continue and to survive economically. So in a sense, people are beginning to think of the future of the islands. And the US is maintaining that they will continue to help us in many other ways. Whereas it is true, I think that Chinese is the way they bring in their projects would attract, the stage as well as the nation. So it is a challenge now.
Something to keep an eye on for the future, no?
Yes, it is really something.
Your Excellency, we've spoken now a lot about the story of these islands and also the life of the church, the religious, the seminarians and so on. My question to you as the new Coadjutor Bishop for Chuk, where do you see your priority? Where do you see, I see the vision, my vision would be here. Where do you place your weight of your priority?
My vision is really to continue to work for the unity of the diocese, so that we try to use our resources together and try to share what we have, so that we continue to make the work of the gospel continue to grow. And because of that, we need to be very responsible, try to be responsible and do things in sustainable way to help us to live the life socially as well as economically. But especially now, I see the need of personal need for the work of the church. So we have some seminarians now at this seminary, and then we have some at the formation. We have a formation house in Chuk. And I see that there is a great need to support this area of helping the seminarians to be able to continue with their studies. And also this number of local people, local clergy, I see the need for them to have continuing education in order to be able to be more effective in their work.
In their pastoral ministry.
In their pastoral ministries. So I see the need of some ways of helping them to be able to go or to invite people from outside to give talks that will help them.
To support the life of the church.
To support the life of the church. And also the value of making catechetical work, to be strong in the islands. Because I think that the young people need that to be nurtured in order for them to continue to be strong in the faith. Otherwise, this concept of materialism and secularism will come in and just take over the lives of the people. So I think catechetical program is also very important in my way of thinking to this for the work of the church in the future.
Your Excellency, thank you so much for having been with us today on our program.
Thank you also for giving me this opportunity. Never thought of this before, but now I'm here, and then we're giving some talk, and I hope it will also help your program.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Excellency. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for having been with us today in our program, Where God Weeps. And if you'd like to know more about the work of His Excellency, Coadjutor Bishop Julio Angel and the lives of the Christians and the Catholics in the Federated States of Micronesia. I would encourage you to look at the contact information at the end of this program, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.